Tuesday, January the 3rd, 2017, to order. We respectfully acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional and ancestral lands of the Coast Salish people. Adoption of the agenda. Moved by Trustee Thorne, seconded by Trustee DeGroot. All those in favor? Motion carries. Minutes of the December 6th open board meeting. Moved by Trustee Hutchins, seconded by Trustee Schmidt. All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to recognition and delegations and over to Trustee DeGroot to honor our special person.
Is Gia here?
Yes.
Could you, oh, here, yes. I actually just got this piece of paper, so now I'm gonna have to read it.
Okay.
In December, you were honored by the city of Duncan.
That's great.
It's a winner of the Perpetual Arts Trophy, and the trophy is presented to the individual in the Cowichan Valley showing outstanding achievement in the arts field. Wow, thank you for doing this. And you've inspired thousands of students to excel in amazing musical performances and help them realize outstanding achievement in the arts. And you are most worthy of the award and the recognition. And on behalf of all of us, thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm actually honored to be part of a district that still supports a music program and supports the fine arts because it's not happening everywhere, and it's really important that it does, so thank you for that support. And I also want to mention that I've had a fabulous principal that supports everything I do, as well as a really strong staff, so I'm very lucky.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving to the report of the closed meeting, Secretary Treasurer Jason Sandquist.
Thank you. Just prior to this meeting, the board held a closed session. At that meeting, the issues of property and human resources were discussed.
Thank you. Moving to old business, the action list. Is there anything that staff or trustees wish to comment on? Question? Mr. Sandquist?
Very, very quickly, we have data now available for transportation review, so we'll need to be setting a date to proceed with that at some point. Also, under the communications and technology, we're in the process of collecting information from other school districts with similar positions, and we've been in touch with PCPC to find out around salary grades and such, so I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Thank you. Anything further on the action list? Okay, moving to Superintendent of Schools, Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. December, looking back on December, it's always a busy month with things going on in schools, presentations, and so on. Just like to bring just a couple to the board's attention. Chemainus Elementary is participating in the CBC Music Class Challenge, and we heard them present their song at those trustees who were able to attend the breakfast on the last day. Here heard Chemainus come and perform for all of us, and that was one of the songs that they sang. Stitches by Shawn Mendes, and there's a YouTube link that will be make available to you, so you can go on and see that. Francis Kelsey Secondary, on December 2nd, a Syrian food banquet was hosted by Francis Kelsey Secondary School, sponsored by the school cafeteria program. The school has 3 Syrian students who've had an incredibly steep learning curve as they adjust to their new life in the Cowichan Valley. And all 3 of them are enrolled in the cafeteria program as one of their courses. And so the father of the students was a chef and was invited into the school along with the rest of the family to help prepare a food banquet for students. Quite excellent. Cole Cobble Hill Elementary and Cole Mount Prevost. Everyone deserves a smile. They participated, undertook a massive campaign to support Everyone Deserves a Smile, an organization whereby families donate socks, tubes, mittens, toothbrushes, etc. Bags of homemade cookies and so on to homeless residents living in our community. And they did a great job. Their target was to fill 365 bags to be delivered, and also helps build empathy on the part of students. So they did a great job, and I'll give you a link to Check TV. We did a segment on that. Maple Bay Elementary School Young Entrepreneurs held a Young Entrepreneur Showcase in the school gym on December 14th. And this program encourages students to create a business plan, do product research, and create products. They invented their products and did market tests to see if the products were popular enough to be sold effectively. Another great program. So all kinds of things happening across our district in the month of December, and those were just a few. We also had I'll just mention one more if I may. The Cowichan climber went to the World Youth Climbing Championships, but I think we'll be asking that young person to come back and be recognized by the board on the February meeting. Did very well in the World Championships. I'll just give you that teaser, and in February we'll recognize that student.
Thank you for bringing these to the board. It's very wonderful that we hear about that, because we don't often see some of these major events in our schools.
So many things going on in
Amazing.
all of our schools.
Thank you.
Next, Madam Chair, have kindergarten registration for French immersion program. And to begin, I would like to give you the context in which this is happening. As you all know, this spring we are having conversations across the province, and we will all be affected by the recent Supreme Court decision around class size composition, space, etc. And that has given all districts, including ours, pause to think about our space requirements moving forward, which may change somewhat significantly. Hard to predict what those changes might be while we're in sort of the early stages of provincially figuring out what the Supreme Court decision will mean for schools and districts. However, we do know that space requirements will likely become a stressor for all of us as a school, for all districts. So to the issue at hand, we have a viable and fast-growing French immersion program in SD 79. Kindergarten is the main entry point for the program. And for the last 3 years, parents have been lining up for a number of hours, and last year it was a number of days in order to secure space in that program. One obvious way to manage that is to create more space. But as I said, this may not be the year to do that, given the fact that there's so many variables around our space requirements that are yet unknown. That are unknown as we go into the spring. So we know that the lineup issue last year was not particularly advantageous to anyone, and in fact, from an equity basis, rules out parents who might be single parents, don't have family care at home, don't have the ability to perhaps take time off work, whatever it might be, in order to line up, or as I said last year, to camp out. So we've had conversations with the French Advisory Committee, which is made up of parents, as well as with the principals from the French immersion schools and vice principals, as well as senior management. And each of these groups has come to the same conclusion that for this current year, we move to a lottery system for registration to manage more equitably putting students into the spaces that we do have for French immersion, while we see the Supreme Court decision play out, and as we get further information for next year about what our class size, composition, and space requirements are going to be, we're in a better place to look at perhaps expanding programming or whatever it might be. We're just not in a place this year to make that decision in time for kindergarten registration, because we don't know. Those are all provincial events that are happening around us. So the action that you have in front of you is to move to a lottery system in January and clearly communicate this process to the community through the school's website, local papers, etc. Moving to a lottery system for kindergarten entry.
Thank you. Trustee Schmidt, moved by Trustee Schmidt, seconded by Trustee Thorne. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you, Superintendent. Moving to Secretary Treasurer.
Thank you. Over the break, we received the updated funding allocation based on the September enrollment and did a quick analysis of that for you. It'd be on the next attachment. It was very early. For the most part, it was as expected. We made some adjustments to our February and May enrollment in the area of adult education, because when we received our preliminary funding announcement last March, the board had made a decision around phase out of that program, so the enrollment was higher than what we were actually going to be receiving this year, so we made some of those adjustments. One of the major changes here was in our salary differential. So we're funded based on the average cost of our teachers versus the lowest in the province and the difference. And we gained $254,000 there that we hadn't anticipated or hadn't had in our earlier projections. We also picked up a bit in the distributed learning from what we had earlier in our projections. So overall, if we go to the very, very bottom, so the grant appears that we're up $3.174 million, but we had a couple things that were line items in our budget earlier, and those were around the holdback distribution and an additional supplement distribution. So those are funding that came in after the announcement last March and has now been included in the per pupil rate. So when we're doing a real comparison, we need to consider that as well as the reduction in the adult education program, which we did as a line item. So really we're up $2.968 million from last March.
Good news. Thank you. Any questions from trustees?
So moving on to year-end projection, and I think we'll get into this in a little more detail when we go into the budget discussions for the amended budget at the DEC on January 24th. What I want to show you is the bottom line there under the surplus line of the first column. It now shows $1.1 million as far as what the budgeted surplus is. So that has gone up. The last time we brought this to you, that was a lower number. And the reason that's gone up is our funding went up based on what I just told you about distributed learning and the salary differential. So that is money that hasn't been allocated out of our current budget to operations from a budget perspective. The other portion of this is to look at the third column, which actually I'll go to the fourth column, which is our projected surplus off that budget. So up in our revenues, we're now showing that we're likely going to be about $100,000 over budget. Last time we were here, our international program hadn't met the year's targets yet, and now they have exceeded them. So we have that good news. Looking at our salaries, as you go down, principal, vice principals, we're within $3,000 on $4 million budget, pretty close. $100,000 on teacher salaries on $31 million. That's really close if you look at it on a percentage basis, and most of them really are. I suspect that under USW salaries, we'll see more maintenance work done now that it's colder and staff will start working inside, and see that number probably go down on the projection. Significant is that the casual replacement number has dropped from the last time we've shown it to you, so it's not projecting as much. In other words, sick leave rose in the month of November from what it was predicted earlier. And again, here we show some utilities, so based on what's happening in the first 3 months, we look like we have a bit of a surplus in utilities, but I suspect that will shift too as we're seeing that it's quite cold this month and that's not reflected in there yet. We have put in just in the projection, although the board has not done this through budget, but one of the budget items that we discussed when we were balancing the budget was not making a reduction of unfunded employee future benefit payment. I feel that the board could make that now should they choose, so I've included it in the projection. So based on what we have in the budget, if all that was to happen, again, it's a projection, we're still really only basing that on 3 months, we would have $793,000 as the generated surplus from this year, which would be added to the budgeted surplus of $1.1 million, even a $1.9 million surplus position moving into next year, if that was to happen. Are there any
Thank you.
questions?
That puts us in a pretty good stead right now, so. Any questions from the trustees? Okay, thank you. Mr. Santos,
Thank
we
you.
definitely like getting the annual or the constant information about our budget and where we stand.
Thank you. My next item is Old Crofton Elementary school closure. We opened new Crofton Elementary in the spring of 2009, and somewhere along the way, the board didn't close the old one, which should have occurred, or should occur. And we have a policy which requires a minimum 90-day consultation, and we've talked to the Ministry of Education about whether they think that would be required. I mean, the school has been closed now for 8 years, and it doesn't seem that we need another school there, given that it's conditioned and given that we have a brand new school right across the street. So the ministry have said they were fine if that is waived, the 90-day, and we have a shortened, compressed consultation, which we still are required to have. So before you are a couple of recommendations. We would propose that if we do have a consultation, that we have that on January 17th, that's 6 p.m. in Crofton following advisory. We would then be able to bring a motion back to the board for closure in February. So before you are 2 recommendations, and one is that the board gives notice of intent to close Old Crofton Elementary facility and immediately commences the consultation process required under policy 2445, school closure.
Moved by trustee Hutchins, seconded by trustee Thorne. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously.
The second motion for consideration is that the Board of Education waives the policy 2445 school closure requirement of a consultation period of no less than 90 days in regards to the decision to close Old Crofton Elementary facility.
So moved by trustee Schmidt, seconded by trustee DeGroot. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, that's that item. The next item we have is around a credit limit borrowing resolution for our purchasing card program. When the program was established probably a decade now ago, $100,000 seemed like a reasonable limit, but it's a limit that has now been reached numerous times. Black Friday sort of tipped us over in November, and we ran into a position where people shopped with their purchasing cards rather than using purchasing facilities or purchasing services. So we are requesting that we increase that borrowing limit to our P-card program. We do get a commission back from BMO when we spend money on the P-card. So there's not a big downside to using the P-cards for greater purchases because we actually get a return that we wouldn't normally get. But to keep us from going over the limit, we have before you a borrowing resolution that the board approve a credit limit of borrowing $300,000 for the purposes of routine operating expenditures charged to the corporate purchasing card.
Moved by trustee DeGroot, seconded by trustee Schmidt. Any conversation? Trustee Croft?
Do we pay it off every month?
Yes.
This one.
Well, no, pay it off in full, I think.
It's automatic.
Great.
Any further conversation? All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Moving to item 9, committees and outside organizations. A, trustee appointments. I discussed the appointments with you individually, so if you feel comfortable, we could have a motion to adopt. Moved by trustee Schmidt, seconded by trustee Croft. Any conversation? All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to minutes of November 17, 2016 PPAC meeting. Trustee Schmidt.
That the Board of Education receives the minutes of the November 17th, 2016 BPAC meeting. So moved.
Thank you. Moved by trustee Schmidt, seconded by trustee Thorne. All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to DSAC meeting of December 14th, trustees Schmidt and Thorne.
Before I move the receiving of the highlights, I just wanna say that DSAC was amazing once again this year. They filled, I believe it was 68 backpacks. And I've never, in all the years been around, I've never seen the stuff that came through, and a huge shout out to Staples. Jeff was unbelievable and is a complete community partner on this next year, wanting to do more for us. So it was a pretty inspiring day for both the kids and the kids that received those backpacks. So I just wanted to make sure I did a little bit of a shout out there before I move the highlights of the December 14th, 2016 DSAT meeting. So moved.
Okay, moved by trustee Schmidt, seconded by trustee Thorne. All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to upcoming meetings and events. The schedule is there. Is there any comment? Trustee Hutchins?
And it's my intention to set the board planning session at a regular, we seem to be all over the map when we have fourth week, third week, second week, first week. Some happens to be, I assume, the second week, January 12th. Is there a way that we can, if we're going to have monthly meetings, set that in?
And that's our attempt. At times, I guess some things shift us, but that is the regular board meeting time, which is the second Thursday of the month. So fortunately, in January 2017, we're going to do it. Anything further on the schedule? Okay, moving to correspondence, none, new business. A, the audit committee, and I wrote out the intent on page 27, and basically all of the recent reports that have come out have recommended that the boards have an audit committee so that extreme due diligence is undertaken by boards. There is a descriptor there of what the audit committee would do, and the structure recommended is 2 trustees, one of whom would chair the committee and would also include the secretary treasurer and any other staff members and or community resource persons that the audit committee wish to involve, and that the chairperson of the audit committee would be appointed annually. So the recommendation that we establish a standing audit committee of the board with the mandate described above, moved by trustee Smith, Spilsbury, seconded by trustee Schmidt. Okay, conversation. Okay, all those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to rural education strategy, and I've added that in just to be sure everyone is aware that request for feedback is out. I did send it to DPAC so that they are aware, and I answered the survey myself and would suggest others do as well, or we can do something else. Any input on that? You probably saw the letter today from Teresa Zantzov, who sent a letter in that I thought was really well documented. Okay.
I found it interesting the definitions people give to rural schools. They provided seem to be quite a spectrum.
Anything further? Okay, moving to question period.
Yeah, I've got one question. Excellent. Sit here so I can hear better. I was looking at the financial update you gave there, and I was wondering, you were talking about we had an extreme need for education assistance for special needs students, and that you were trying to fill those positions. If those positions aren't filled and the parent has to take the student elsewhere, what's that money for? That still stay in the district? Happens for that money that comes into the education system.
Well, fortunately, we have been able to
Sorry, I didn't get that.
find a way to support the student in the school. All kinds of flexible ways through administration, other teachers. I'm sure that probably there's been some assistance district-wide to make sure that the student has support.
Okay, that's great. Just want to double check that out. It's been a while since we last talked about it.
Any further questions? Okay, moving to adjournment. Motions to adjourn. Moved by trustee Magruder, seconded by trustee Schmidt. All those in favor? The motion carries.
I want to stay.
This,